Guess what? Sunday Sanctuary is produced by a non-profit, which makes perfect sense, right? And it's also quite fun because you never know where the money's going to come from. So this is your invitation to join that fun by supporting this kaupapa and helping to share something you love with even more people looking for soul-nourishing spiritual conversations. It's simple. You can choose between a one-off donation or become a regular supporter and help Sam and I keep making Sunday Sanctuary. To give now, head to our website, sundaysanctuary.nz. Kia ora, and thank you.
Maybe I can find my treasure. There's too much for me to do. Maybe I can find my treasure. Maybe my treasure rests in you.
Sunday Sanctuary with Petra Bagust.
E ngā manu, e ngā reo, mai e ngā hauewha. Tatu mai nei ki te manga o tēnei rākau whakaruruhau. Tau mai nei ki tēnei kaupapa e pāpaho atu nei ki a koutou ara ko Sunday Sanctuary. Ko Petra Bagust tēnei, e rere ana ngā mihi ki a koutou katoa. To everyone from each corner of this country, come and rest on the branch of this sheltered tree. You are welcome to this project, this space, Sunday Sanctuary. I'm Petra Bagust and I acknowledge you all. This episode of Sunday Sanctuary is all about whakarongo, which means listening. And I think it's pretty common for us to, basically have the opinion that we're pretty good at listening. And my opinion is that it's regularly not until we're older that we recognise we might have been good at keeping quiet for a minute or two before our next turn to talk. But listening, I'm finding out, is a lot more layered and textured and interesting than not talking. Because let's face it, when we are not talking, we might be talking loudly inside our own heads. Listening is, in fact, an active and a multi-dimensional pursuit. And I reckon most of us could agree that listening is a really good idea. And yet, so much division is caused by people not being listened to or not really listening. We're going to investigate listening from a couple of perspectives, starting with how do we and can we listen to each other. So we're talking to Meg Cowan, who is a sexologist and relationship therapist. Then we're going to explore how do we and can we listen to God. And for that, we'll talk to Spanky Moore, who's an Anglican priest based in Nelson, New Zealand. So, along with waiata, community life, communion, and all the other good things, let's have a listen together. Here's Meg Cowan. Meg Cowan, sexologist and relationship coach. So good to connect with you again. We've done this in the grey areas space and live on stage and in tūpo, but it's nice to be here hanging out with you for a Sunday Sanctuary kōrero. How are you?
Oh, kia ora. Yeah, I'm good. It's nice to join you. Thanks for having me.
Well, I just thought you might be quite a good and glorious human to yarn with about the topic of listening, because I understand part of your mahi, your work, is to counsel couples. And so they are maybe finding it hard to listen to one another or wanting to open communication lines. And look, every single human being every day communicates in some way. So could we start by perhaps you telling me your concept of listening, what you think is beautiful or beneficial or the basics of listening?
You're right. I see lots of different versions of listening when I've got clients in front of me, and I see it done really terribly, and then I see it done beautifully as well. So to me, listening is really beautiful when people are truly listening to hear each other. They're not listening to get their point across. They're not listening just waiting for their chance for the other person to stop and them to jump in with what they need to say or the point they need to prove. They're really listening deeply with love and care to better understand the person they're in conversation with.
Okay, so that you're not describing listening to win or listening to entertain or listening to have a better story or to prove a point. You're talking about the deep, like that there's a very active, receptive nature to listening. It's not just an exchange of words or ideas, is it?
No, I think it is it is a primal need to be heard. And if we think about it from a nervous system point of view, we have what's called a social engagement system. And so that's the eyes, nose, mouth, ears, that's all connected to cranial nerves of our face. And that social engagement system is actually what signals safety to us in our bodies. So listening is actually about so much more than just receiving information. Like, we want to know that in a conversation, we are safe and we are connected and we are in connection. That's the social engagement system working. That's how our bodies are designed to work.
And I can, like, just to have compassion for a moment for anybody in a situation where they're not feeling heard, where they don't feel like they've been able to communicate their idea, or that they've come from a background maybe where they weren't listened to, where their opinion didn't count, or whether they couldn't make space, that we carry all of our prior experience of being or not being listened to into our conversational lives, right? In conversation being this exchange, we think of conversation as the talk, but the conversation doesn't exist, I guess, if there's no listening. So that context of the kind of background or the kind of experiences, traumatic or otherwise, we've had, or difficult or otherwise we've had, surely that makes a big impact to how we feel when we're talking and listening.
Yeah, absolutely. We listen in context and we respond in context. And so sometimes you can have somebody in front of you who is doing the most beautiful job at trying to share their point with care, with compassion, all of that. But if you and your body are reactive, because like you said, maybe you haven't been listened to in the past, or you've been told to pipe down, or, or shut off, or kept quiet for various reasons. It happens to all of us at different points. But sometimes we are actually responding not to the person who's in front of us, but we're responding to historical things that have happened. And so I believe that one of the most important things about learning to listen is not just learning to listen to others, but learning to listen to ourselves and what's happening in our bodies, so that we can then be aware of that context in our other conversations with other humans.
So give me an example of what happens in the human body when we are able to listen and feel safer.
Yeah, so actually there's, I'm so glad that we're talking about this, because there's a really cool study I was reading recently it's someone, and I wrote the name down because I can never say it right, Kawamichi is their name. Kawamichi, I don't know their first name, sorry. But they did a study back in 2014 about the effect of active listening and what happens in the body. And there's been further studies since then as well. And there's another one last year that I was reading. It was so interesting. But your body actually regulates when you feel like somebody is listening to you well. So they've studied like heart rate variability. So that can change and adjust. They studied like respiratory rate and those sorts of things. So your body can physically feel more at peace when somebody's actively listening to you. So beautiful.
So when you're saying your body regulates, you're saying it gets into a really healthy state.
Yeah. It's the state of being where we're not in fight or flight. We've all heard about fight or flight and that reactive state that we can get into. And it's quite easy to get into that reactive state when we are in a conversation about maybe something where we don't agree with people. We've got a difference of opinion, and we've got a different view from someone else, and it's easy to get defensive. And so active listening in a conversation helps us to stay more in that beautiful, calm, relaxed, regulated state of being instead.
So I hear you say listening is more than shutting up.
Mm-hmm.
It's an active, engaged posture of potentially of your mind and your body and your attention. What if, because this is where we've got that our ability to listen will depend perhaps on whether we were listened to or whether we've got kind of enough self-awareness to know about our behaviour and how it impacts the people we're in conversation with. Listening is like somebody could come to me, right, and I could adopt a really healthy posture, and they might be presenting a good point really vehemently or aggressively or assertively, and I might be offended by that. Like, we can listen with the best intention in the world, but other people's way of communicating can be quite activating, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so it's just something to be really aware of. Am I responding to what this person is saying, or am I responding to the way they're delivering this point? Because and we can't control how other people come to us, but we can notice what's happening in our body as we're doing our best to listen and go, oh, I feel like, I can feel my heart rate's going up, my breath's a little bit quicker. I think, okay, I can listen to myself and my body in this process as well.
And I'm thinking about myself as the talker. I talk assertively in certain contexts, and I've been told to calm down. Don't be so dramatic. There's nothing going wrong. And I think there's nothing going wrong. I'm just like excited, or I'm and so I have this reaction to being calmed down because I don't feel heard and understood. How do we, in those situations where our personality types, our habits, our prior experiences sort of overtake us, is there anything we can do to listen better or hear better?
Yeah, I think it's good to remember that you can take a pause in conversation. You can say to the person that you're talking to, oh, I really want to hear what you're saying, and I'm noticing that I feel a little bit defensive, and that's a me thing right now. My body feels a little bit defensive. I often talk with couples about this, like, take a time out. If you feel flooded, if you're noticing those reactions in your body, you can say to in this case, if it's a partner, hey, honey, I love you. I actually really want to hear what you're saying. And I think my ears have kind of turned off because my heart's going fast, right? So can we just take a minute? I'm just going to grab a cup of tea. Let's come back to this. And, sometimes it's only a minute or two, but it's good to listen to your body and ask for that break if you need it.
I can even imagine this would be useful in friendships or collegial situations where you can state, I want to have this discussion. I want to stay in relationship with you, or I value our relationship and our friendship. I'm struggling at the moment. Can we pause? Like that, even that intention, acknowledgement of this relationship matters. Even though that we're having a hard time, there's probably a level of bravery there, but it could be useful, right?
Yeah, you're right. It does take bravery. And because we're actually not used to people interrupting conversations with it, or pausing conversations, we kind of think once we're going we have to keep going, and it does take a level of self-awareness to say, oh, I'm feeling a bit reactive, can I pause? And I love that point that you just made about I really value our relationship. That's a great thing to voice, whether it's a working relationship or a family relationship. Actually naming that and saying, hey, I really value our connection. And so let's just take a pause. I want to come back to you on this. Or even, something I've been trying to teach my teenagers is, hey, it's okay. You don't have to be so fast with your text replies, because that's another form of listening and communication in a slightly different way. But just like take a breath, take a moment and think about what you want to say. I know that's hard. You and I are both quite fast talkers a lot of the time. We don't take so many pauses.
I was going to say, some people are like, they're fine. I'll take a couple of days to reply to that text.
Yeah.
And I'm like, send. Oh, I should have proofread. I'm like, I'm glad you can edit messages now.
Yes.
Like, you can even get into habits of listening, can't you? Personally, okay, so I've got a fast brain. I'm diagnosed ADHD. And I honestly used to listen to reply. I used to be listening to have a witty response or a great story, or to encourage the person with my heartache, whatever, like just listen to try and, whether I was trying to help or not, didn't really matter. I was quick to respond. So even that idea of a pause is pretty powerful, yeah?
And I recognise that that's hard to do when you have a fast brain, because one of the things about neurodivergent folks is often that they can recognise the patterns. And so they feel like they can see the pattern in conversation. You're like, I know where this is going, right? And so we have some ADHD in our household. I see it and I live it. And so it's like, hey, I know where this is going. Like, can you hurry up and get to the point? And so taking that pause can be challenging. Like, I know it's one thing to get on here and talk about take a pause, but I understand the reality of living that. It takes practice.
Yeah. Yeah, it does take practice. I feel grateful to be 53 and have kind of finally learned to listen better. I don't think I've nailed it. I've noticed though, and this is something I find fascinating, I wonder if as, really connected, engaged, entwined human beings, we can notice what feels off for us and stop doing it. And I'm referring to when you lay something down or you tell somebody something, having it acknowledged, what I guess you'd call almost reflected or reflective language or clunky language when you're in counselling, is so amazing. To have that person say, oh, yeah, yes, that's so interesting. Or just to have it, just to allow what somebody else says to land.
And even some questions like, can you tell me more about that or what that means to you? Or I'm hearing you say XYZ, reflecting back what they're saying. So it's one part the context that we bring in ourselves, and then it's also another part skill. And that reflective listening and paying attention to your own body and your own responses, those things are skills that we can learn and we can, improve over our lifetimes.
What do you say to somebody who perhaps hasn't got a practice of listening to themselves that well?
Well, it's a good time to start. You can push pause on this podcast for a moment, or you could, listen to this, and then when it's finished, take a moment and take a deep breath. If it helps you, you can close your eyes. And you can say, what do I notice in my body after listening to that podcast? Is there something that I learnt that was interesting, that really landed with me and it felt really good to learn that information? Or what's something that I think I could maybe do a little differently? So actually just taking that moment and asking yourself the question, and then just pausing and waiting and seeing what feelings come up for you.
And I guess you could do it the other way too. You could say what landed and felt uncomfortable or challenging. Yeah, I love that. Can we talk, just to round it out, about being in relationship with somebody and holding different views? We live in this quite consciously divisive age where American politics feels like it's kind of encroaching on us, and the binary mindset is rearing its head. And so there can be this impetus to feel like you have to disagree with somebody if you think differently, or you mustn't disagree. Like, how do we engage in conversation where both perspectives might be, given space or respect, but you don't have to agree?
It's so prevalent at the moment, isn't it? So conversations feel so polarized at the moment in the world, and I think social media and media can amplify the polarization. And so finding spaces where we can come together with people and agree to disagree. Often if we look at our social media feeds, we become quite siloed, and the algorithm feeds us more of what we respond to. So whether that's, really inflammatory things, or it's things of our particular opinion. And so sometimes actually as a practice, I will follow some people on social media who have quite different opinions to me. And I will, not because I want my algorithm filled with that, but because I want to practice hearing other opinions and not getting super reactive, but listening for the humanity and what's behind what they're saying and those sorts of things. So that in in practice with somebody that we're in relationship is a challenge. I'm not saying it's easy, but I think it is important to practice listening to other people's opinions and just saying, okay, I might not agree with this, but I'm looking for the beauty in your humanity here.
And you don't necessarily have to try and change their mind. Like that's where things can go awry, right? Where you're proving who is right and who is wrong. It's tough. It's tough. I guess there are also places where you might listen and you might think the path of wisdom here is not to say anything because you might not feel safe or because you might not want to upset somebody. Does that feel valid to you, or is that a cop-out?
I think it's a very, very dependent on the situation. I don't think I can give a hard and fast rule on that one, because there are some times when actually for your own safety you do need to be silent, and that's really, really difficult sometimes. But I recognise that there are some people in some contexts who that's true for. It's a really big one. But we need to have enough people in our world as well who help us to feel safe to bring our voices forward and to have opinions. And so cultivating safe spaces where we can have conversations where there is difference is really important. So.
Yeah, and I love your practice listening to people with different ideas. I think that sounds very healthy.
I'm not saying I love it, but it's
in reality, I've invited people to do that in the podcasting space I'm in. It's like we might be very different, but where is our common ground? Or are you able to posture yourself to hear something without having to necessarily agree with it? So, yeah, no, that's beautiful. Thanks heaps, Meg.
Oh, no problem.
I always love having a chat to Meg Cowan. She's such an upbeat human who, despite, helping people through difficult times, has this innate sense of hope. And I heard a challenge on the weekend, and it was to have generous assumptions about people. And I wonder if that is a posture that would work well with listening. When we're listening, are we listening to hear what that person's saying that's wrong or could be better or needs to be improved? Or are we listening to hear the good intention? Are we listening to assume the best of that person? So even our attitude to listening can have an impact. Before we take a quick break, here is an excerpt of an interview with Cameroonian musicologist and writer Francis Bibi. He has in his hand the pygmy flute. It's a simple instrument that plays a single note. And yet this instrument only works in conversation with the person who plays it. It's kind of fascinating. Feel free to share this episode of Sunday Sanctuary with a friend who you think would appreciate it. Leave us a review on your podcast player of choice, and we are Sunday Sanctuary NZ on Instagram.
Here's a Sunday Sanctuary sacred text.
It's a bamboo flute playing only one note. That's the only note you can get out of that flute. But the pygmies, who are the inventors of this flute, are clever people. And I'm glad to tell about the pygmies around the world, because when I was a little boy, they taught me that the pygmies were savage people just because they live in the forest, which isn't true. It's not just because you live in the forest that you're a savage man or a savage woman. Savage people, to me, live elsewhere than in the forest. They usually live in cities. But this is another problem, another question. The pygmies have invented a fabulous musical technique or instrumental technique, which consists in having a conversation with their own instrument. The technique is very simple, but someone had to find it out, and they did. You ask the flute to speak to you, and the flute says something like, and you reply to the flute by saying, and all the music you can make with this flute is a conversation between man and his own musical instrument. I think this is interesting. For instance, I can play. Using the same technique. You know, I'm teaching you how to do it. You should pay me.
Sunday Sanctuary with Petra Bagust.
I gotta know you're meant to be the man I need. Talk to me, talk to me, talk to me, talk to me. Be the man that I need, baby. Talk to me, be the man that I need. Talk to me, be the man that I need, baby. Talk to me, be the man.
That snippet of Waiata was Man I Need by Olivia Dean. Ooh, I like her. Okay, we went to you, our community, and asked, what does it feel like to be truly listened to? And here's what you had to say. Like two hearts connecting. It's different to the mind trying to make sense of what's shared. You feel seen, known, worthy of being understood. Someone else said that feeling truly listened to feels really strange, like a bit creepy. Then I get defensive and blow off whatever personal information I just gave. I guess that does make sense to me. I can see how that can happen. Another person said, loved, valued and worthwhile, accompanied. And another person sent in David Augsburger's quote, being heard is so close to being loved that for the average person they are almost indistinguishable. And so the answers also came, safe, loved, valued. No idea, said one person. Like a warm hug. And also, understood, I suppose. I've never really thought about it. Do my husband and children even listen? Validating, like being loved. And finally, loved, appreciated, respected. And now, let's have a reflection on communion with the rather wonderful Reverend Frank Ritchie.
As has become the custom of Sunday Sanctuary, we're going to reflect on the ancient practice of communion, a ritual instituted by Jesus the night before he died. Leaning on the thoughts of others I admire, I sometimes refer to there being a song in the universe, an orchestra playing, and that how we live can either have us playing in tune with that song or adding discordant noise that is terribly out of tune. A noisy world that pulls us in all directions, has us stressed, distracted, unable to focus, and has us feeling constantly vigilant and agitated about this issue or that, is one that pulls us away from tuning into that song. It throws us out of tune. It's not that various issues don't matter, but the constancy of them in today's world runs the risk of overwhelming us, and we have a propensity to be pulled out of tune. There is a way to exist in the world that has us in harmony with that song that undergirds the universe, a way we were designed to be. To be tuned to it, we need to build the muscle of listening past the noise to the quiet whisper underneath it all. In the ancient scriptures, St. John tells us that through Christ all things were created. In his ancient letter to the church in Rome, St. Paul, speaking of Christ, said, "For from him and to him are all things." Stoicism holds to the idea of the logos, the nature of the universe that all things are to align with, the way of being we seek to conform our life to. St. John tells us that this logos became a person, Jesus. Christ is the logos. It is with this understanding that Holy Communion, our ritual participation in that ultimate act of Christ's love towards all of creation, and being given Christ, becomes a moment of listening. In the practice of Holy Communion, we do not step away from the issues of the world, but rather we bring all of who we are and turn towards the author of the song, and we listen. We listen to something that was, is, and always will be true as various problems come and go. Love. the self-giving love of God. As we listen to what is present in Holy Communion, we do not let the chaos of the problems themselves dictate the terms of our lives. Rather, we let the love that we hear in the gift we are receiving shape and guide our being. And as we do, we are tuned into the song.
Sunday Sanctuary.
Coming up, I listened to Reverend Spanky Moore talk about how we can listen to God. And right now, here's a waiata for you. It's Live for Each Other by New Zealand band Cut Off Your Hands.
What's the matter with you? What can I do? Alright with you? We live for each other. What's the matter with you? Alright with you? What can I do? We live for each other. What's the matter with you? What can I do? Alright with you? We live for each other. What's the matter with you? Alright with you?
Reverend Spanky Moore, always a delight and never a chore.
Kia ora.
Let us talk about listening.
Yeah.
And do you know this, the little bit of me that is quite delighted about discussing listening with you is that I would perceive both of us as natural talkers.
Yeah, my background when I was a bit younger was in radio and talking. Look at what we're doing now. And this is something that people who, I'm sure most of your listeners, they won't do radio things. Just think about how bizarre and unnatural and unhuman it is that a song plays, that you turn on a microphone and you have a 1-minute conversation with yourself where you talk about the song and the time and the weather and what's coming up, and then you finish it and you play another song. It is a profoundly unnatural act, is to just keep having little conversations with yourself. I don't think I would have ever said this 10 years ago. I love listening to people. I know, when you talk to me, I'm having opinions and being a bit verbose. My word, it's just become one of the great joys of my life to listen to people and to spot the themes. It's probably one of the favourite things that I do. It's a whole new, for some of us, learning how to listen and how to do that well and how to delight in it. And when you can spot things and what someone's sharing that they didn't spot themselves, and you go, did that just happen? And they're like, it's just, I do love it. I do love it.
You've kind of opened the window there on the delight or the joy of listening. Is there another example that you can give of like what it's like to delight in listening, like what listening bestows on you?
I had one of my almost like my spiritual father, my father, passed away some years ago, and so it's interesting that sometimes elderly people play a more significant role. And so there's this chap called Alistair Mackenzie, and I had never encountered someone who could listen and see the themes of my life so distinctly, and not just with me, with anyone. And it's like something, I began to kind of sit at his feet and go, I want to become whatever he's doing. I don't know how he does it. I want to do that for other people.
So that's a metaphorical sitting at his feet.
Yeah, sorry, not literal sitting at his feet.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Hard to hear down there at the feet. So, anyway, and one of the delights for me is I've actually begun to master what he does for other people, and the feeling that I had when he used to listen to me and say, I'm seeing this and that and this, and you go, oh my word, you're right. You know me better than I know much. Wow, that starting to do that for other people, that has because there's both this part of I'm offering to others what someone gave to me, but somehow by listening to how he did it, do you know what I mean? By being humble and actually listening to how he listened to other people, I have been able to almost pass that on. And once, when the day when he comes and he dies, I'm still able to kind of carry this legacy on of how you do that. That brings me huge joy. I don't know what that's about. It brings me huge joy.
And we're not talking about this is the only and correct way of listening. Like there is dinner table listening and there's like, small talk listening. There's like listening that it comes and goes, right? This kind of, I think you can listen like that in small talk, to be honest. I think you can listen to hear. But it's not like some sort of rule that now you must always listen to this intensity and in this purity and degree. That said, what you're saying is, I believe, profoundly true. Can we take it to this?
Take it to the bridge.
Yeah, let's take it to the bridge. And Mother Teresa, I'm going to misquote, was interviewed by, I think it was Dan Ruthers from an American network, and he said, when you pray, what do you say? And she said, I don't say anything, I listen. And so Dan's got it right. He goes, okay, then so what does God say? And she goes, God doesn't say anything, he listens. And if you can't understand that, I can't explain it. So fabulous and frustrating.
Totally. This is one of the areas I love to try and work with people in. I'm not saying I don't frustrate people as well, but I'm often like, well, I'm the best you've got. So, it's sort of like, let's contend around this together. And I think one of the parts in this is that there can be this deep knowing that goes beyond articulation. And so people who are very mature and wise at a certain point, think of Mother Teresa and her relationship with God. The issue can be sometimes they're not very helpful for those of us who are at different stages, who are more frustrated, because while it sounds profound and mystical, and if you got up and said it in a monastery, everyone would go, yes, that's right. The rest of us are sort of like, well, clearly we can't disagree with it because Mother Teresa said it, but we don't actually know what that means. And I find it really refreshing hanging out with people that go, I don't know what that means. I love it. Because I'm like, enough. I'm going to have to up my game over what are we talking about? What are we communicating? Because often talking around listening to God is trying to put language on things that are hard to articulate. It's like, I don't know, it's the equivalent of when, a flavor wheel, like wine, you're tasting wine, you're tasting coffee, and they develop flavor wheels that might have 40 or 50, and you taste a coffee and they go, well, can you taste the cinnamon? Can you taste, the Italian salt? Can you taste this white pepper or the black? And partly you go, this is crazy, right? But actually what they're trying to do is put language on things so that your range and your palate is starting to appreciate things that you otherwise couldn't taste, things that you're otherwise blind to. But it's a bit unnatural, isn't it? Because do you know what I mean? You're putting language on something that, how do you describe what it's like to first fall in love without using a metaphor? It's very, very, well, your stomach sort of has this feeling, and this is partly why it's such a challenge is, we're trying to put language on things that often we haven't. But there's one of can I talk to you a little bit around the challenge of listening to God?
Yeah, please.
I think for many of the people I talk to, there's a bit of a conflict going on within them. And it feels like on one hand, they want a more intimate connection with, I would call it, God, the divine, their spiritual side, the sense of the loving presence that sustains all things. They want this more intimate sense, right? Like the equivalent when it comes to listening and being with God, like they want to go on a date with a lover. They want that sense of intimacy and closeness. But then they also, out the other side of their mouth, demand that a conversation with God should be as clear and as kind of recognizable as like a pack and save billboard. You know what I mean? They're like, I want to go on a date. I want to feel it. I want to vibe it. But also it should be huge. It should be in the biggest font and it should be absolutely clear, And I think it's really hard to have it both ways all the time, that there's a sense of sometimes the kind of listening and relationship that we want to cultivate with God does have an intimacy and a nuance that if we haven't developed our palate for that, it can be really intimidating, but sort of working. So listening to the voice of God for me, it takes practice, self-awareness, discernment. What was the sandwich I ate? What might be the divine voice? What's my childhood wounds? You know what I mean? Like, what's my attachment? Was that the attachment issue, or was that the divine spirit speak? There's that kind of thing. And if you're a bit unsure, I think, about God's existence, they often can second guess themselves. So they might give themselves over to this sort of childlike playfulness. Oh, I think I sense something stirring in my spirit, and then they're sort of doubt or second, that might do. And again, that doesn't release people to dance and play in a way that sometimes helps open up. I think of it like helping my daughter to get used to drawing and painting. And whenever she paints something and then she screws it up and says that's useless. Have you ever been around a kid that does that? And you want to go, no, this is the whole wrong posture to do it. Just keep playing. Don't let this second guessing come in. So, I was thinking of the example just before we came on air today. Remember how we were trying to get your microphone to work?
I do remember when you couldn't hear a thing I was saying.
Couldn't hear a thing, and we were there. Everyone was Stan was trying to check it out and do, what's going on? Let's restart everything, and it was going on. I think people tend to they might say that they want to be more available to, if there is a God, experiencing and hearing that God. But there's a funny thing for us where we tend to, at the same time, make ourselves as bloody unavailable as possible. right? Like we put the most ridiculous obstacle. And I was thinking of you. I really want to talk to these people, but it's like your microphone wasn't plugged. The cable.
The cable was unplugged.
The cable was unplugged. About
I really want to talk to Sam and Spanky, but I'm not plugging my microphone in.
Yeah, and I thought, it's a little bit like our listening. At some point, we might need to actually plug the cable in rather than making this as difficult as possible, rather than having as many distractions around us as possible. Like, what does it mean to, open the way, smooth the way for that? So I thought I'd share with you briefly, like, two things.
Okay, cool.
Right? The first one I want to talk about is the place that retreat can play in our life. You've probably seen on the very bougie magazines, they always talk around as retreat centres and
I have.
all that palaver. I've been running retreats. I tallied it up the other day because last weekend I was running a retreat. And I was like, how many retreats have I run in my life? I think I was about 74. I think I've led about 74 retreats. So retreats have been a big part of my life. Silent retreats, all sorts of kinds of vocational calling retreats, emotional health retreats. Really significant. They're really significant, Petra. Getting away, and I know you might say it sounds corny and cheesy, so many people have key insights by getting away from the regular noise of their life and they take some time aside. And I want you to think, I have a particular hut that I like to go to. Having a place and a space where you go away on retreat. People put time aside to go on holiday, which is very good, but I'm surprised how little people put aside time to do a bit of a deeper work of listening to God, listening to themselves. And I am I've just seen so many lives that have been impacted by the spiritual practice of going away on a retreat. And I think three things happen on a retreat. You've got the space where you're listening to myself. What are my emotions? What are my desires? What are the reoccurring patterns happening in my life, good or bad? And it all comes up. All your repressed grief, it all comes up, right? It's very good. It doesn't always feel good. I'm saying it's good. You start becoming present to the world's needs. What is it that my family or what does the world, I've loved escaping from them, but actually I feel a sense of call back to them. What is it that the world needs? What is my reason in life? Now that I'm here doing nothing, I'm actually feeling kind of agitated where I sense there's a call on my life. What am I supposed to go back and do? Retreat's really good at sharpening that. And then the last one is like about listening to God. So you kind of got this listening to self, listening to the world, listening to God. And the question for me is like, what does it mean to hear? What does it mean to listen? And I think Westerners have developed sort of this big brain and these very narrow understanding of what listening means. I don't think a lot of Indigenous cultures would resonate with how we think listening's got to be very straightforward. Like I said, like Peckham say billboards. And listening, hearing, perceiving with all of your body, with all of your senses, that is something that I think a lot of us need to kind of practice. And I find that retreat really you know what I mean? It removes a lot of those distractions where you can start to learn, how can I hear the voices in the bush? And then you tend to have practiced so you can do a bit better in the city when you go back to the city. But my observation on retreat is that God speaks in really short sentences to me. It's not big diatribes. He tends to speak in like a sentence, and I'm like, right. Okay. Well, there it is, isn't it? And then you spend the rest of the retreat going, right.
Wow.
Right. Right. And that's been my thing I've noticed around listening. Do you resonate with any of that?
I do. I haven't done the retreat thing because in my past, I've not been any good at being on my own. So I've made friends with both my introvert and myself as I've journeyed through life. My experience of hearing God is very short sentences, 5-ish words. I'm trying to think of one of them at the moment. I can't, but it will come to me just like that. And I'm like, oh. But I wonder if also my most effective prayers have been very short sentences.
Yeah, I think I'd say one of the short sentences God once spoke to me was, look, I love you, but we've come as far as we can come unless you deal with your rejection issues. And I was like, ooh. and so there wasn't a doubt of being loved, but there was kind of this thing of like, okay, right. And I've had a lot of prayers where I've been like, I'm really scared. So it makes me upset when I say that. But again, there's very short sentences that are very honest and vulnerable, And I know people would say, well, how do you know that's God? Or how did you? It's a very difficult thing around. You start to cultivate a sense of what that voice sounds like. And this moves on to my second point. I also want to say, retreats, you don't have to go by yourself. There are all sorts of ways you can go away with people, putting aside intentional time to do it. And I think we could do a better job of helping people know how to go away with friends and do little retreats and stuff. But my second point is this. The other part is getting to know your past is a real key part of listening to God. And what I mean by that is there's this exercise that I do with groups of people, and it's really profound that they do. And it's essentially what you do is you get a bunch of sticky notes out with different colours, and they begin to look over all of their life, plotting out the key moments that have gone on in their life. So they write down, then this might take a couple of hours, but you get people to write down, imagine you doing this for yourself. You write down, what are all the key moments in your life? You write them all down, different one on different bits of sticky note. So you're kind of brainstorming on pieces of paper, what are all the key notes? Then you get out your sticky notes and you write down, let's put all the painful or hard moments on one colour. You start to build a timeline of your whole kind of life where you've got your painful intersecting moments and you've got all these different moments, key people that influenced my life, key things that were spoken over me that brought me to life, or key moments of joy. And you've got all of these parts. And then you begin to sort of identify chapters. So you actually say, if I was to name this as a chapter, looking at your life, Petra, you might actually name your life as having these 6 key chapters, and you come up with the names for the chapters. And then you put X's by key turning points, right? The times when the story changed and moved. And then you put another circle on lessons learned. Where were there places in my life where I actually learnt key lessons? And you look over this, and I'm going quickly over it. It takes ages, but you suddenly go, and here's the key for me around listening. How has God spoken to me in the past? How does God work with me? Not with Petra, not with Spanky. Great, Spanky has this inner knowing and he can sense the voice. That's not important. The question is, God knows your personality and how you work and your story. He's going to work with you in a way that you are wired, how you're worked with. And often we spend time looking at our future going, I know nothing and I've never heard from God and what could I, and your future lies in your past. It's much better to spend time looking at your past and getting a sense about how does God work with me and deal with me and speak with me to help you be reassured over how God speaks with you in the future, rather than just lamenting and thrashing about. Right? I really believe that we could spend even just a few hours if you get a sense. And sometimes when you start to see it, you go, like, let me give an example. For me and my calling, this is not for most people. When it's time for me to change job and to move, it's pretty bloody clear, Petra. Like, it's like, boom, comes out of the sky, we're done, we're moving.
See ya.
And when I look at my timeline, guess what? It's a reoccurring thing. So when I get worried, here's the thing. When I get worried, am I in the right job now? There's a little bit of reassurance, isn't there? Which says, I'll know when I know. Right, but I think this question of how has God worked with me in the past is such a reassuring and helpful thing to get to grips with your own story. Really helps you as you go forward. So if people are interested, they call it like a sticky note timeline. It's people both loathe it. They're like, oh God, this is so hard, but they also go, that was actually one of the most significant things that I can do. So those are 2 things I have. I think retreat and learning how to listen with all of our senses, all of our body, and coming to grips with how God or the divine voice has spoken to us in the fullness of our story in the past will help us the most in the future.
I love it. And it's very confronting. It's a very confronting thing to do somehow, to excavate and mine for those moments and to take time to see and consider. I really love the idea of listening with our whole being. I love that. It's not an ears-only exercise. I love it. And I'm so glad that we got there. And now I want to go on a retreat.
Out on a silent retreat, you're sitting on the deck. The sunshine comes up on your face. You put your hands out. You feel all your emotions coming up. You feel a sense of, I'm not sure what I'm doing. And then you say, I'm going to listen with every part of my being. Listen with my eyes and my ears and my mouth and my senses. I'm going to just receive it and listen and see if I can. It takes time, but at some point you go, oh, I perceive it. I'm beginning to learn how to perceive what's going on here.
And off the back of Spanky Moore, talking about how we might listen, connect, for our examen, I'm going to invite you to sit and listen. It's not exactly a retreat. It's more a few moments and minutes to examine in the kindest, most compassionate way possible the space that you find yourself in. So feel free to open your ears, your mind, your heart, to your inner wisdom, to God, to the birds, to the traffic. Feel free to sit and listen. Allow me to end with a benediction from the book When I Talk to You by cartoonist and poet Michael Lernick. Let us pray for wisdom. Let us pause from thinking and empty our mind. Let us stop the noise. In the silence, let us listen to our heart, the heart which is buried alive. Let us be still and wait and listen carefully. A sound from the deep, from below. A faint cry, a weak tapping, distant, muffled feelings from within. The cry for help. We shall rescue the entombed heart. We shall bring it to the surface, to the light and the air. We shall nurse it and listen respectfully to its story. The heart's story of pain and suffocation, of darkness and yearning. We shall help our feelings to live in the sun. Together again, we shall find relief and joy.
Sunday Sanctuary.